Hello, all my dear students. I'm Amit Ajmani, your science mentor. I hope you all are doing good. Welcome to Sri Jendra Rank Zone classes. And in today's class, we'll be starting up a new chapter, that is carbon and its compounds. Now, what exactly is carbon? We know that carbon is a non-metal whose symbol is capital C. It's a very important element. Reason is that all the living things, including plants and animals, they are made up of carbon based compounds, and all such compounds which are carbon based are called organic compounds. Fine. And there are so many organic compounds that a separate branch of chemistry called organic chemistry deals with the study of all these organic compounds. Now the atomic number of carbon is 6. So when we do the electronic configuration of carbon, it comes out to be, in K shell we have got 2 electrons, and in L shell we have got 4 electrons. Now since it has got 4 electrons in its outermost shell, and in order to become stable it requires either to lose 4 electrons or to gain further more electrons in order to become stable. So its valency is 4, and that is why carbon is called tetravalent. Why? Because carbon has 4 valency and it requires to lose or gain 4 electrons to achieve its inert gas configuration. This carbon atom is very small, and because of this reason its outermost electrons are strongly held by the nucleus. Because of this reason it's not possible to remove 4 electrons from a carbon atom in order to make it stable, and it is also very difficult to add as many as 4 electrons to carbon atom because of various energy considerations. So now carbon cannot lose 4 electrons, carbon cannot gain 4 electrons. So what exactly it does it? It shares the electrons. In order to become stable, in order to gain that inert gas configuration, it shares electrons from other elements. And we know that the type of bond formed because of the sharing of electron are covalent bond. Therefore, carbon always forms covalent bonds. So carbon is tetravalent. That means it has got 4 valency, and carbon always forms covalent bonds because it requires to lose or gain 4 electrons, which is very difficult. So it shares the electrons. Fine. Now this carbon has a very unique property, that is the self-linking property of carbon, which is known as catenation. It is considered to be the most outstanding property of carbon, and by virtue of this property carbon can combine with other carbon atoms to form long chains. Now because of these formation of long chains, carbon gives rise to an extremely large number of carbon compounds or organic compounds. We have just studied that carbon always forms covalent bonds, and these covalent bonds between the various carbon atoms are very strong, due to which they do not break easily. Also, due to the small size of carbon atoms, their nuclei hold the shared pair of electrons between atoms very strongly, leading to the formation of strong covalent bonds. And that is why carbon compounds are exceptionally stable, because of the small size of carbon and because of the strong covalent bonding done by carbon. The compounds of carbon are exceptionally stable. Now this carbon occurs in nature in various forms. So let us brush up a few different forms of carbon. It occurs in the free state or the native state in the form of elements, and it has got various forms in which it occurs like diamond and graphite, right? And it also occurs in the combined state, that is in the form of compounds with other elements such as carbon dioxide. In air, the carbonates, that is the limestone, marble and chalk. It also occurs in the combined form in fossil fuels like coal and petroleum. And just we studied organic compounds which consist of carbohydrates, fats and proteins, etc. Let us study these various forms of carbon in detail. First of all, we'll be studying about the crystalline forms of carbon. Carbon occurs in three crystalline forms. One is diamond, another is graphite, and another is Buckminster fullerene. You need to remember these crystalline forms of carbon. It is asked in the questions. You will be given four options among which you need to select the crystalline form of carbon. So if among these options you are given any of these like diamond, graphite or Buckminster fullerene, we have to take that. We need to study a bit about all these three crystalline forms starting with diamond. Now diamond is a colorless transparent substance having extraordinary brilliance. This diamond is quite heavy and extremely hard, and it is considered to be the hardest natural substance known. Quite important property of diamond is that diamond does not conduct electricity. Yet another property of diamond is that if we burn diamond in oxygen, then only carbon dioxide is gas is formed and nothing is left behind. So if 100% carbon dioxide gas is formed, nothing is left behind. It simply shows that diamond is made up of only and only carbon, and that is why its symbol is also taken to be capital C just like carbon, because it is 100% carbon. Clear? A diamond crystal is a very big molecule of carbon atoms, and very important property in diamond is that in diamond each carbon atom is linked to four other carbon atoms which are present at the four corners of a regular tetrahedron by strong covalent bonds. And because of this, diamond is very rigid, and that is why it is such a hard substance. Clear? Diamond has a high density and a very high melting point. It is an exception in the non-metals, because non-metals usually have low melting points, but it has got a high melting point. Carbon in the form of diamond, and its melting point is more than 3500 degrees Celsius, which is quite high. And because of this, a lot of heat energy is required to break the network of strong covalent bonds in the diamond crystal. Now we said that diamond is a non-conductor of electricity. Why is it so? Because in a diamond crystal, we have seen that each carbon atom is linked to four more carbon atoms with the help of covalent bonds, and the valency of carbon is 4. So all the valencies of each and every carbon atom is completely filled. They are used up in forming up the bonds, and because of this there are no free electrons in a diamond crystal which are going to conduct electricity. So that is why diamond does not conduct electricity. Clear? Coming to the uses of diamond, quite important uses. Number one, diamonds are used in cutting instruments like glass cutters or saw for cutting the marble, or in rock drilling equipment Why? Because of its great hardness. Now this is not the diamond which we normally see females and girls wearing. It is a different type of diamond which is called black diamond, which is very hard just like normal diamond is, but it is comparatively quite cheap, and that is why it is used in these kind of cutting and drilling equipments. Another use of diamond is that we are more familiar with. It is used in making jewelry. Now why it is used, we need to remember the reason. It is used because of its extraordinary brilliance. And why it is so extraordinarily brilliant? Because it has a great ability to reflect and refract light. That is why it shines so much. Next use of diamond is that the sharp edged diamonds are used by eye surgeons. Why? As a tool to remove cataract from eyes, for which a great accuracy, a great precision is required. So these are the most common uses of diamond. Let us now study about the second crystalline form of carbon, that is graphite. Now this graphite is a grayish black opaque substance. It is quite light as compared to diamond and is soft and slippery to touch. Now this graphite conducts electricity. It's a good conductor of electricity. So you see all these points are actually the differences between diamond and graphite, right? Diamond was a transparent substance. It is a black opaque substance. Diamond had a high density. It was heavy. Graphite has it is less density. Diamond was so hard, whereas graphite is soft and slippery to touch. It is soapy to touch, just like soaps. Diamond does not conduct electricity, whereas graphite conducts electricity. So these are the differences between diamond and graphite. But there is one similarity also. What is the similarity? Just like diamond, if we burn graphite in oxygen, then again, just like diamond, only carbon dioxide gas is formed. Only. That means nothing will be left behind. And it shows the same thing. The same conclusion is drawn that graphite is also made up of 100% carbon only, just like diamond. And that is why the symbol of graphite is also taken to be capital C. Now there is a huge difference between the structure of diamond and graphite. In diamond we have seen that it had a tetrahedral structure, and in diamond each carbon atom was combined with 4 more carbon atoms. But it is not in the case of graphite. In graphite, each carbon atom is joined to 3 more carbon atoms by strong covalent bonds to form flat hexagonal rings. But these layered form structure in graphite, the layers are held together by weak van der Waals forces, and that is the main reason why these layers can slide over one another, making it comparatively a very soft substance, right? Now we said that graphite is a good conductor of electricity. Why so? There is a reason behind it. It is a good conductor of electricity because we said that each carbon atom in graphite is joined to only 3 other carbon atoms with the help of covalent bonds. But carbon has a valency of 4. Therefore, only the 3 valence electrons of each carbon atom in graphite are used in bond formation, and the 4th valence electron is free to move. And it is the presence of this free electron in a graphite crystal that it conducts electricity. It is one of the very important exceptions in non-metals, that all the non-metals normally are poor conductors except carbon in the form of graphite. Clear? So this is a bit about graphite, about the structure and a few properties. Now let us see a few uses of graphite which are very important. Now while doing the uses, whether it is of diamond or graphite, we need to relate the properties based on which these diamond and graphite are used for various purposes. Let's see for graphite. Because graphite is very soft and slippery to touch, so powdered graphite is used as a lubricant for the fast moving parts of machinery, and it is non-volatile. Also, it has got a high melting point, therefore it is suitable for lubricating those machine parts which operate at very high temperatures. The second use of graphite is that because it is a good conductor of electricity, therefore it is used in making carbon electrodes or graphite electrodes in all our dry cells. Next use is, we know that graphite is black in color, it is quite soft, and it can mark black lines on paper. That is why it is used for making black cores of pencils called pencil leads, and it is also used in paints. So these are a few uses of graphite that we need to relate and remember. Coming to the third crystalline form of carbon, that is Buckminster fullerene. This is also one of the allotropes of carbon, which contains a cluster of 60 carbon atoms only, and they are joined together to form spherical molecules. Now, Buckminster fullerene is comparatively a very small sized structural carbon allotrope because it contains only 60 carbon atoms. So its formula is C60. Just like a football, it is also football shaped spherical molecule in which 60 carbon atoms are arranged in interlocking hexagonal and pentagonal rings of carbon atoms. This Buckminster fullerene is dark solid at room temperature, and it is different from diamond and graphite. How? Because number one, diamond and graphite are giant molecules. They contain an unending network of carbon atoms. But as we said, Buckminster fullerene is a very small molecule made up of only 60 carbon atoms. Right? One similarity of Buckminster fullerene with diamond and graphite is that just like diamond and graphite, when Buckminster fullerene is burnt, it produces only carbon dioxide. Nothing is left behind. So again, the conclusion drawn from this activity is that Buckminster fullerene is also made up of 100% carbon. Right? Now these three crystalline forms, diamond, graphite and Buckminster fullerene, they are called the allotropes of carbon. What are allotropes? We must know. Allotropes are the various forms of an element whose physical properties are different but chemical properties are same. So the chemical properties of all diamond or graphite or Buckminster fullerene, we have just seen they are same because they are made up of 100% carbon. Whenever we are going to burn them, heat them in the presence of oxygen, they will liberate 100% carbon dioxide, leaving behind nothing. And these three have got different physical properties. And what is the difference in the physical properties? That is their hardness. Diamond, we just studied, is extremely hard, graphite is extremely soft, and Buckminster fullerene lies in between. It is not that much hard like that of diamond, nor it is that much soft just like graphite. So these are the three crystalline forms of carbon, that is diamond, graphite and Buckminster fullerene. Now let us study about the amorphous forms of carbon. Carbon also occurs in its amorphous forms. How? In the form of coal. Now coal is the most impure form of carbon, which is from vegetable matter, which is buried under the due to pressure and temperature conditions. This coal is extracted from coal mines, and on the basis of carbon percentage, coal is classified in various types. Now this along with percentage you need to learn. It is asked many times in the questions. Peat, it contains the minimum amount, that is 60% of carbon, and it is the lowest grade of coal. Lignite contains approximately 67% carbon. It is brown in color. Bituminous contains 88% carbon. This is the soft coal. And anthracite contains 96% carbon. It is lustrous and hard coal. So, peat contains the minimum, the lowest percentage of carbon, and anthracite contains the maximum percentage of carbon in it. So this is the first form of carbon in the amorphous form. Next is coke. Quite importantly, it is obtained by the destructive distillation of coal. It contains almost 85 to 95% of carbon, and it is used as smokeless fuel. You have been asked a question, which among the following is a smokeless fuel? So it is coke. And this coke we have studied in metals, non-metals in the previous chapter, that carbon in the form of coke acts as a reducing agent in metallurgy. For doing which process? For reducing the metal oxides into free metal, right? So coke used as a reducing agent in metallurgy. Coke is a smokeless fuel. These two things you need to remember. Next form is charcoal. Now this charcoal is obtained by burning a carbon compound in the absence of air. There are different types of charcoal: wood charcoal, animal charcoal, sugar charcoal, etc. Next form is lamp black. It can be obtained by burning any carbon rich oil in an insufficient amount of air, and this lamp black is used in the production of printer ink and carbon papers. So these four are the amorphous forms of carbon. They are coal, coke, charcoal, and lamp black. Let us study about coal tar a bit. This coal tar is a black, thick liquid having a very unpleasant smell. It is a very complex compound. It is a mixture of about 200 substances, and it contains many substances like benzene, phenol, aniline. They are used in making dyes, drugs, and also they are used in polymer industry, right? Nowadays, bitumen, it's a petroleum product, and this petroleum product bitumen is used in place of coal tar for metaling the roads. Initially coal tar was used, nowadays we are using bitumen. Next, we need to have a basic idea about coal gas. This coal gas is a mixture of carbon monoxide, methane, and hydrogen. And this coal gas is used as a fuel in many industries which are normally situated near the coal processing plants. This coal gas, just for your knowledge, was used first for street lighting in London in 1810. Long time back, more than 200 years back, right? Now, carbon, we saw that there are so many compounds made up of carbon. Quite important question is, what exactly is the reason for such a large number of organic compounds or carbon compounds? It is mainly because of two important characteristic properties of carbon, due to which carbon is able to form such a large number of organic compounds. And what are these characteristic properties? One is catenation or the self-linking property, and another is tetravalency. Carbon has four valency. Now, because carbon can link with one another by means of covalent bonds, it can form long chains or rings of carbon atoms. This property is called catenation. Now these long chains are mainly of three types. Either they are straight chains, or they are branch chains, or they are closed chains or the ring type chains. For example, this is a simple straight chain in which the carbon atoms are combined in a simple chain. This is an example of branch chain, that with the combination of carbon atoms in a straight chain, there is one carbon atom in the form of a branch. There can be more, and there are so many more branches. This is an example of closed chain in which carbon are actually combined with each other, forming a closed shape. It may be triangular or square, rectangular or pentagon or hexagon or octagon, any particular closed chain shape, right? So this is the first property, the first reason why carbon has millions and millions of compounds. Second property, as we said, is the tetravalency. Now the valency of carbon being 4 is very large, due to which this carbon atom can form covalent bonds with a number of other carbon atoms, as well as a large number of other atoms, mainly hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, chlorine, many more. And that is why it forms such a large number of organic compounds. Fine. Now we'll be studying about a bit of the combined forms of carbon, in which the first is the hydrocarbons. Now what exactly are hydrocarbons? Simply the name in itself suggests that those compounds which are made up of hydrogen and carbon only, nothing else. Only hydrogen and carbon, they are known as hydrocarbons. And the most important natural source of hydrocarbons is petroleum, that is the crude oil which is obtained from the deep earth crust. Now these hydrocarbons are further bifurcated into mainly two types. One are the saturated hydrocarbons, which are also known as alkanes. Now what are these saturated hydrocarbons? This is a hydrocarbon in which the carbon atoms are connected by only a single bond, and these are also known as alkanes. For example, methane, which is CH4, ethane, which is C2H6, propane C3H8, and butane C4H10. These are all examples of alkanes. As for the structure, methane has the structure, there is one carbon atom and there are four hydrogen atoms with which this carbon is combined. So the formula becomes CH4. Ethane contains two carbon atoms, and because we are talking about hydrocarbons, all the rest elements, all the bonds will be filled by hydrogen only. So this is ethane containing two carbon atoms and six hydrogen atoms. Propane consists of three carbon atoms and the rest are all hydrogen. So the formula is the C3H8. Fourth one is butane containing four carbon atoms and rest are all hydrogen, and its formula is C4H10. Now quite importantly, in exams you get this question many a times, that how many bonds are present in. You will be given any compound like methane or ethane or propane or butane, and you have to count the number of bonds. So these are the bonds. So if we are talking about propane, these are the various bonds formed between carbon and carbon, as well as carbon and hydrogen. So we can see that propane consists of three bonds, another three bonds, another three, and one. 10 bonds are present in propane, right? Now these alkanes can be represented with a common general formula, and that general formula for alkanes is CnH2n plus 2. Now what is N? N is the number of carbon atoms in one molecule of alkane. For example, if we want to get an alkane of 2 carbon atoms, then we will put the value of N to be 2. So it will be C2. How many hydrogen will be there? It will be double of the carbon atoms plus 2. 2 into 2 is 4 plus 2 6. This is a compound with 2 carbon atoms C2H6, and this is what we see here, right? Now these saturated hydrocarbons or these alkanes, they contain single bonds, and because of the presence of the single bonds, these saturated hydrocarbons are clinically not very reactive. Fine. Coming to the second type of hydrocarbons, these are unsaturated hydrocarbons. You must have studied all in detail about the unsaturated hydrocarbons. So you already know that these are of two types, alkenes and alkynes. If there is a double bond between the carbon atoms, then it is called alkene, and if there is a triple bond between the carbon atom, it will be called alkyne. So both alkene and alkyne, which contain the double and the triple bond respectively, they are actually the types of unsaturated hydrocarbons. Clear? So alkenes have double bond, they contain C double bond C group, right? For example, ethene, it is CH2 double bond CH2. Similarly, propene, there are 3 carbon atoms containing a double bond. Talking about the general formula of alkenes, you already know what is the general formula. It is CnH2n, where once again N, what is N? It is the number of carbon atoms in its one molecule. So we just see that in alkenes, the number of hydrogen atoms are exactly double the number of carbon atoms, right? Talking about the alkynes, we have just told that alkynes are those unsaturated hydrocarbons in which there is a triple bond between the carbon atoms. Talking about their general formula, it is CnH2n minus 2, where N is the number of carbon atoms. Clear? Now, since these unsaturated hydrocarbons contain double or triple bond, that is why they are comparatively much more reactive than the saturated ones. And one thing important to relate it doesn't make any difference whether it is alkane or alkene or alkyne. The valency of each carbon atom in all these three types, whether it is alkane or alkene or alkyne, the valency of carbon remains always same, that is 4. Valency never changes. Clear? Now next type of hydrocarbons are the cyclic hydrocarbons. What are these? These are the hydrocarbons in which the carbon atoms are arranged in the form of a ring or the closed structures. Now these cyclic hydrocarbons can be both. They may be saturated containing single bond, or they may be unsaturated containing double or triple bonds. For example, cyclopropane, the formula is C3H6, cyclobutane, whose formula is C4H8, cyclopentane, whose formula is C5H10, and cyclohexane, whose formula is C6H12. They are all actually the saturated cyclic hydrocarbons, right? And the general formula of these cycloalkanes is just like alkenes, that is CnH2n, where N is the number of carbon atoms. This is an example of cyclopentane and cyclohexane given to us. In cyclopentane, we can see, please follow the marker, these are the 5 carbon atoms which are actually forming a ring, and because these are hydrocarbons, so apart from carbon, we will have all the valencies of carbon filled with hydrogen, and the general formula of cyclopentane is C5H10. Similarly, if we talk about cyclohexane, in hexane there are 6 carbon atoms which are combined with single covalent bonds, and the rest valencies are filled with hydrogen, and its formula is C6H12. Now, quite importantly, you need to relate benzene. Now, what is benzene? Benzene is an unsaturated cyclic hydrocarbon. Its formula is C6H6, and the compounds like benzene, they are known as aromatic compounds. Now, what exactly happens in benzenes? We have got 6 carbon atoms just like cyclohexane, but the difference is that benzene contains alternate single and double bonds. And what is meant by alternate? One will be single bond, then the next will be double bond. One will be single bond, the next will be double bond. One will be single bond, next will be double bond. So this is the main difference between cyclohexane and benzene. Cyclohexane contains all the single bonds between carbon atoms, whereas benzene consists of alternate single and alternate double bonds. The general formula of cyclohexane was C6H12, whereas the general formula of benzene is C6H6. So this is a brief about the cyclic hydrocarbons and the types of hydrocarbons. We have studied about the saturated hydrocarbons, that is the alkanes containing single bond between carbon atoms. Then we talked about the unsaturated hydrocarbons. They are further bifurcated into alkenes or alkynes depending upon whether there are two or double bond between carbon atoms or whether there are three bonds or triple bond between the carbon atoms. Then we studied about the cyclic hydrocarbon which form a ring. They can be both saturated as well as unsaturated. We studied the example of both. In saturated, we studied about cyclopentane and cyclohexane, and in unsaturated, we talked about benzene. Clear? Now let us study about the various rules of naming of hydrocarbons. We know that if there is one carbon atom, it is indicated by writing meth. If there are two carbon atoms, we write eth. There are three carbon atoms, we write prop. If there are four carbon atoms, we write but. It is written as but it is read as but. 5 carbon atom carbon compound, that is called pent. For 6 carbon atom, we call it hex. 7 carbon atoms, that is indicated by writing hept. 8 carbon atoms are indicated by writing oct. 9 carbon atoms by non, and 10 carbon atoms by dec. Right? Now, if these carbon compounds contain a single bond, that means they are alkanes, so we just add ane at the end to indicate that they are alkanes. For example, methane, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, hexane, heptane, octane, nonane, decane, etc. If they are unsaturated, and in unsaturated they contain double bond, that is alkenes, we write "ene" at the end to indicate that they are alkenes. For example, ethene, propene, butene, pentene, hexene, etc. If it is an alkyne containing triple bond, we simply add "yne" of the alkyne to indicate that they are alkynes. For example, ethyne, propyne, butyne, pentyne, hexyne, and so on. So these are the basic rules, right, that we follow. For saturated hydrocarbons which contain single bond, we just write "ane" after the stem word. Unsaturated hydrocarbon containing a double bond, it is indicated by writing "ene" after the stem, and a triple bond containing alkyne is represented by writing "yne". For example, in alkanes if we talk about, then one carbon atom alkane, one carbon atom means meth, and for alkane we have written "ane". Similarly, two carbon atom compound in saturated, two carbon atom means eth, again single bond, that means it is an alkane, we will write "ane". For three carbon atom alkane, we will write the name to be prop, which represents three carbon atoms, and ane, which represents that it is an alkane. The name becomes propane. Similarly, for 4 carbon atoms, we write but and then add ane, it becomes butane. For 5 carbon atoms, it becomes pent plus ane, that is pentane. Correct? So these are how we name the alkanes. Now there are two type of naming which is done. One is common naming and one is IUPAC nomenclature. IUPAC you all must be familiar with, International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. Nomenclature means naming. So the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry has set certain rules in order to form the consistency of the naming of the carbon compounds globally same. Just like in physics we have got SI units, just like in biology we have got the binomial nomenclature, similarly in chemistry the namings are done as per IUPAC, and for this they have given certain rules. Let us see what are the various rules. The first rule says that we need to do the selection of the largest carbon atom chain. This is known as a parent chain. If there are other carbon atoms remaining, then they will not be the part of the parent chain and they are taken as substituents. Now we have selected the parent chain. In that parent chain, the carbon chain is numbered in such a way that the alkyl group, that is the substituents, get the smallest possible number. And in case any functional group is present, you have studied about various functional groups, aldehydes, alcohols, carboxylic acid, ketones, etc. So if they are present, then it gets the smallest possible number. And we also make some changes in the name, how the E of the alkane, this ending E, is removed and it is replaced by the suffix of the functional group which indicates the position. This we will study in detail later in the chapter, right? So we can just skip this particular point for the time being. We'll study and understand a bit later. Now, in case different types of substituents are attached to the chain, then they are arranged and named alphabetically. Right? For example, if ethyl and propyl are attached, then in that case, ethyl with alphabet E will come first and propyl with alphabet starting P will come later. And if the compound has unsaturation, that means if it contains double or triple bond, similar rule to be followed. We will write ENE for the double bond representing that it is an alkene and YNE for the triple bond representing that it is an alkyne. So these are a few set of rules as per IUPAC. Let us try to understand with the help of a few examples. For example, now this is a particular compound given to us. What we did was, we will just try to take the maximum possible number of carbon atoms coming in a single largest chain, and we see that these 3 carbon atoms are forming that chain. Now this CH3 group, which is the methyl group, it is not actually coming in the parent chain, so it will be taken as a substituent. Now in the parent chain that we have put in the brackets, in the box, we will name the carbon atoms. We will give the numbering. Starting from first side, this is the first carbon atom, this will be the second, this will be the third carbon atom. If we can start from the other end, then this will be the first carbon atom, this is the second, and this is the third. Now we need to relate that this methyl group, it is attached to this carbon. What is the lowest possible number coming to that carbon to which this methyl group is attached? In both these cases now, whether we start the numbering from the left hand corner or the right hand corner, the number is coincidentally coming to be the same, that is 2. So accordingly we will write the name. It will be 2 dash methyl propane. Now, how exactly we interpret this name? Prop means there are three carbon atoms. Ane, that means they are connected with single covalent bonds. Methyl is used as a prefix. It is the substituent attached, and we will number it. To which number of carbon atom it is attached? To the second carbon atom. So the name becomes 2-methyl propane. Right? This is the IUPAC name. Its common name is isobutane. If there is one branch, we use iso dash. If there is a straight chain, we use N. And if there is more than two chains or two chains, more than two, then it will be neo dash. Clear? Taking the next example. Now in this case, we can see that there are four carbon atoms which can come in the straight longest parent chain. Right? So if in the box we have put in these four carbon atoms, we will write the name of these first. Four carbon atoms means but. They are connected with single bond, so it will be ane. So the name becomes butane. Now we will check out for the substituent, which is basically CH3 dash, and this is the methyl group. So we will write the word methyl in front of butane. Now we need to relate to which carbon atom it is attached. Now it is attached to this carbon atom. So we will give it the lowest number. There are two possibilities. One, that I start with the right hand corner. According to it, in this parent chain, this right hand corner carbon will become the first carbon. This will become the second carbon. This will become the third carbon, and this will be fourth. So as per this numbering, our methyl group seems to be attached to the third carbon. Now let us see, starting from the left corner. Now from left, this is the first carbon atom. This becomes the second, this becomes the third, and this becomes the fourth. Now as per this, now our methyl group seems to be attached with the carbon atom which is having the number 2. So what should we take? Whether we should take 2 or 3? In that case, IUPAC nomenclature gives us the rule that we need to give the lowest number. And out of 2 and 3, 2 is lower, so we will use 2. So the name becomes 2-methyl butane. This is the IUPAC name, and because there is one branch, then the name will be iso-pentane. Clear? So this is how actually we give the IUPAC names. Let us take one more example. Now, in this particular example, actually it may be given to you like this: CHHH and CHHH. So the first thing that we need to do is make it compact. This is one carbon having three hydrogen atoms attached to it, so I can write it to be CH3 in the compact form. Similarly, this is CH3, this is CH3, and this is also CH3, and in the middle we have one carbon atom. Right? Now if I want to give it the maximum longest chain, I will see that it is just coming up to be of 3 carbon atoms. So because in the parent chain there are 3 carbon atoms, first of all we will write that name. It becomes prop. Because there are single bonds between the carbon atoms, we will write ane, indicating that it is an alkane, saturated hydrocarbon. So the name becomes propane of the parent chain. Now outside the parent chain, we can see that there are two methyl groups attached. So if there are two methyl groups, now we will write dimethyl, di representing 2. And we give to the numbering to each methyl group present. The first upper one methyl group is attached to this carbon atom, which is given number first, second, third. Starting from anywhere, it will get the second number. So the first methyl group is attached to the second carbon, and similarly the second methyl group is also attached to the second carbon. So now we will write 2, 2. We will separate these two alphabets, the word figures with the comma. So it becomes 2, 2 dash dimethyl propane. This is the IUPAC name. And because there are two branches, so we will use neopentane representing two branches. Clear? So this is how we do the IUPAC naming. You must have done it in detail in your class. So there are so many examples for practice that you must have done. So we are just revising it. So I am not taking any further example of the saturated ones. Let us take the case of double bonds. Unsaturated hydrocarbons. How we name them? Simply, there are two carbon atoms containing double bond in between them. Because there are two carbon atoms, name becomes eth. Containing double bond, it will be ene, so the name becomes ethene. This is the IUPAC name. Its common name is ethylene. Right? Similarly, if there are three carbon atoms, there is a double bond between two set of carbon atoms and single with the other two. Because three carbon atoms, we'll write the name to be prop. Since there is a double bond, in order to indicate that it is an alkene, we will write ENE. So the name becomes propene. And this is the IUPAC name. Its common name is propylene. Right? Talking about the unsaturated hydrocarbons containing a triple bond. If there are two carbon atoms containing triple bond, two carbon atoms are written as eth. And since for triple bond they are alkynes, we'll be writing YNE. So that is ethyne, right? It is also known as acetylene. It is the common name acetylene. Ethyne is the IUPAC name. If there are three carbon atoms, they are quite actually small. So let me just write it down for you. Now there are three carbon atoms containing one triple bond in between. Right? It is CH3, single bond C, single bond CH. So if there are three carbon atoms, we will write the name to be prop, and there is a triple bond, so we will add YNE. So the name becomes propyne, which shows that it is an alkyne. Right? Similarly, we'll have butene and pentyne and hexyne. All you already know, I suppose. Right? Now talking about homologous series. What exactly is a homologous series? A homologous series is a group of organic compounds having similar structures and similar chemical properties. But there is a difference of CH2 group between the successive compounds. Right? So, between the successive compounds, there will be a difference of CH2 group. That series or such series is called a homologous series, and the various organic compounds which are there in a homologous series, they are termed as homologues. Now when we are talking about a homologous series, there are certain characteristics which need to be followed, which need to be remembered. The first and the very important characteristic is that all the members of a homologous series can be represented by the same general formula. And what exactly will be the general formula? It all depends on which series we are talking about. If we are talking about alkane series, then all the members of the homologous series of alkanes, they are represented by the formula CnH2n plus 2, where we know that N is the number of carbon atoms. Had it been a homologous series of alkenes, we have taken the formula to be CnH2n. And for the homologous series of alkynes, each and every member of homologous series of alkynes will be represented by the general formula CnH2n minus 2. So this is the first characteristic property of a homologous series. Second, very important is any two adjacent homologues differ by one carbon atom and two hydrogen atoms in their molecular formula. That means there will be a difference of CH2 group. Clear? If we are talking about the number of atoms, then the difference is of one carbon and two hydrogen atoms. But when we talk about their masses, so we know that the mass of carbon is 12 units and mass of one hydrogen is 1 unit. So if two hydrogen are there, it will be 2 units, and 12 plus 2 will be 14 units. So the difference in the molecular masses of any two adjacent homologues, that is of 14 units. Adjacent word is important. Consecutive or adjacent is important. So if we are talking about the number of atoms, then the difference is of one carbon and two hydrogen atoms. But when we talk about their masses difference, then as per the difference in mass, the adjacent homologues will differ by 14 units. Clear? The fourth characteristic, okay, let me come to it. The fourth characteristic of the homologous series is that all the members, all the compounds of a particular homologous series, they will show similar chemical properties. Now, why exactly they are showing similar chemical properties? I think it's quite easily understandable that because of the same type of bonding between the compounds of a particular homologous series, they will show the same chemical properties. But we cannot say the same thing regarding the physical properties. Let us see the next point. The members of a homologous series show a gradual change in their physical properties. Why? The reason is increase in the molecular mass, increase in the number of hydrogen and carbon atoms, right? For example, if we talk about alkane series, just taking an example, as the number of carbon atoms per molecule increases, then the melting points, the boiling points, and the densities of its members increase gradually. So if we are talking about alkane series, then in between methane and butane, butane will have a higher melting point. Butane will have a higher boiling point. Butane will have a greater density as compared to methane, right? So these are a few characteristics of homologous series. Let us see the homologous series of the alkanes, alkenes and alkynes that we have studied till now. Talking about alkanes first, one carbon atom is methane added to show that it is alkane. It becomes methane and its formula is CH4. The second member is ethane. The formula is C2H6. Third member is propane. Formula is C3H8. Fourth member is butane. Formula is C4H10. Fifth is pentane. Formula is C5H12 and so on. Similarly, we'll have hexane, heptane, octane, nonane, decane. Heptane is also called as septane. Both are correct, not an issue. Now, if we try to relate the actual thing, we can see that in between two consecutive items, that is methane and ethane, if we take, then in methane we had one carbon atom, but in ethane we had got two. In methane we had got four hydrogen, and in ethane we have got six. So the difference between these two adjacent hydrocarbons is that of one carbon and two hydrogen, CH2. Similarly, if we take between ethane and propane, again we'll find the difference to be one carbon and two hydrogen atoms. Between propane and butane will be same, butane and pentane will be same. Clear? Now talking about the homologous series of alkenes. Now alkenes start with minimum two carbon atoms. That is eth. There is no meth alkene or methene existing. Why? Because for alkenes we require double bonding, and if we are taking one carbon atom, then in that case in a hydrocarbon the other valencies will be filled up by hydrogen, but hydrogen has only one electron to share. So it cannot share more than one. It cannot share two or three electrons. So any alkene, or for that matter any alkyne, which actually consist of double or triple bond, they need to have minimum two carbon atoms. One carbon atom along with hydrogen cannot form double or triple bonds, right? So the homologous series of alkenes start with ethene and the formula is C2H4. The next homologue is propene, formula is C3H6. The next one is butene, formula is C4H8. The next is pentene, containing 5 carbon atoms, formula is C5H10. Then hexene, C6H12, and so on. We'll have heptene and octene and nonene and decene. Now they belong to the same homologous series. The best way to check is to check the difference between the consecutive homologues. If we see the difference between ethene and propene, ethene has got 2 carbon atoms but propene has got 3. So there is an increase of 1 carbon atom. Now ethene has 4 hydrogen atom and propene has 6 hydrogen atoms. So the difference is of 2 hydrogen atoms. So once again, the difference between two consecutive homologues, the adjacent homologues, is again that of CH2, that is 1 carbon and 2 hydrogen atom. Same is applicable in the case of propene and butene. Once again, 1 carbon and 2 hydrogen atom difference. Similarly in butene and pentene, and similarly in pentene and hexene. Clear? So this will be a homologous series for alkenes. Next, talking about the homologous series of alkynes. Once again, there is no methine which is possible. It has to be minimum 2 carbon atoms starting with eth, that is ethyne. The formula is C2H2. Next homologue is propyne. The formula is C3H4. Next homologue is butyne. The formula is C4H6. Next is pentyne. The formula is C5H8. And next is hexyne. The formula is C6H10. And so on. We'll have the heptyne and the octyne and the nonine and the decyne. Again, they belong to the same homologous series. Let us try to check out the difference between two adjacent homologues. Adjacent, we take the ethyne and propyne. Relating the difference between the two, we'll see that there will be a difference of 1 carbon atom and 2 hydrogen atom. Again, if we take propyne and butane, this propyne and butane, the difference will be again 1 carbon 2 hydrogen atom. So every time it is the difference of CH2 group between two adjacent homologues in a particular homologous series. So this is all about the homologous series, its characteristics, and the homologous series of alkane, alkene, and alkynes. Fine. So I hope we have covered a lot of topic. And before ending up this particular session, let us try to relate and revise once again what all we did in this class. Let me bring you back to the starting. So now I'll be just repeating it a bit speedily, that what all we discussed, so that going back home you can revise everything. Coming to the next class, you should be through and thorough with all these. Carbon, we talked about carbon as a non-metal having symbol C. Then atomic number is 6, electronic configuration is 2,4. It has got 4 valence electrons, that is why it is called tetravalent. Then carbon has to achieve inert gas configuration. For that it needs to lose or gain 4 electrons, which is very difficult. So it shares electrons, and that is why carbon always forms covalent bonds. Next, we talked about a very important self-linking unique property of carbon, that is catenation, due to which carbon can form long chains. Secondly, carbon has a very small size, that is why the compounds of carbon are exceptionally stable because of the strong covalent bonding made by it. Then we talked about the various forms of carbon. In this, we talked about the crystalline forms first. The crystalline forms consist of diamond, graphite, and Buckminster fullerene. We saw the various properties and uses of both diamond as well as graphite. We also discussed about the various differences between diamond and graphite. Then we talked about Buckminster fullerene, and we related that Buckminster fullerene is made up of only 60 carbon atoms, giving it a football shape, pentagonal and hexagonal interlocking patterns or rings. All these crystalline forms, they are called the allotropes, having different physical properties and same chemical property. The difference in their physical property is their hardness. Diamond is very hard, graphite is very soft, and Buckminster fullerene lies in between. And the similarity in their chemical properties can be checked by burning all three of them, whether it is diamond or graphite or Buckminster fullerene. They all will burn and they will produce carbon dioxide, leaving behind nothing at all, which shows that they all of them, they are made up of 100% carbon only. So these were the crystalline forms of carbon. Next, we talked about the four amorphous forms of carbon: coal, coke, charcoal, and lamp black. In this, we need to specially relate the four types of coal: peat, lignite, bituminous, and anthracite. Out of these, peat contains minimum 60% carbon, anthracite contains the best 96% carbon maximum, right? In coke, we need to relate that it is a smokeless fuel and it is used as a reducing agent in metallurgy. Then we studied a bit about coal tar and coal gas. We need to relate that coal gas is a mixture of carbon monoxide, methane, and hydrogen. Clear? Then we talked about the reason for such a huge number of carbon compounds. Two possible reasons. Number one, catenation, that is a self-linking property, and another is tetravalency, having four valency. Now, when carbon combines with more carbon atom forming long chains, those chains are of three varieties, that is the straight chain, branch chain, and closed chain or the ring type chains. Clear? Then we started with hydrocarbons. We talked about the saturated and the unsaturated hydrocarbons. We talked about the general formula. Then we discussed about cyclic hydrocarbons, both of saturated as well as unsaturated. In saturated, we discussed about the cyclopentane and cyclohexane, and in unsaturated, very importantly, we discussed about benzene. Clear? After this, we related the various rules for the naming of hydrocarbons and importantly, the rules as per the IUPAC nomenclature. IUPAC nomenclature is quite important. You need to relate. Fine. We saw many examples for doing the IUPAC nomenclature. Then we talked about the homologous series. What is a homologous series? What are the various characteristics of a homologous series? And the homologous series of alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes. So this is what we all studied in this lecture. Make sure that you go back home, learn side by side and practice wherever required, especially the naming, especially the bond formations, right? So practice them, and in the next lecture we'll continue up this carbon and its compounds, right? So I hope you have understood what all I have taught to you in this class, and I really hope that you will be learning it thoroughly by heart. So we'll meet up in the next lecture. Till then, take care of yourself and stay healthy, stay happy.